It has been revealed that later on this year, ZEB Wells will start his final ever arc for The Amazing Spider-Man, meaning that his journey on the ASM books is finally coming to a close. Breathe a sigh of relief, am I right? But who will replace him as the writer of the Spider-Man books? Well, let's discuss the options and who I personally think will replace him. But before we get into that, if you are new around the channel, I want to urge you guys to subscribe and join the best Spider-Man community in the entire world. We're on the road to 30,000 subscribers. Let's try and push for that goal. But with that being said, let's get straight into this. The Amazing Spider-Man books are something that are very special, and you have to get them right. They are in the spotlight of Marvel Comics, and no other comic gets nearly as much attention as they do. Even other Spider-Man comics from the 616 universe, like Spectacular Spider-Man, written by Greg Wisman, doesn't nearly get as much conversation as the ASM books. So realistically, it has to be someone that can handle the pressure, and also is a very good writer, and can handle the character of Peter Parker. And the first person that comes to mind is, of course, Chip Zdarski. If you guys have heard of the name but don't know the face, Zdarski is the guy who wrote Spider-Man Life Story, Spider's Shadow, and a plethora of other comics. He has a great understanding of the character, and if Life Story is anything to go off of, he is by far the best choice for the Spider-Man books. As fans of the character, one thing that ZEB Wells really got wrong in his run was the idea of regressing Peter Parker instead of progressing the character. One of the main things that he did and used as a story beat was splitting Peter and MJ up again, just when Nick Spencer got them back together. Like, we don't want this. However, Zdarski has proven that he understands the importance of progression throughout Peter's life. Therefore, I think he'd be the perfect choice. And if anything, Spider-Man Life Story proves this, since it is literally a comic book about Peter's life and his progression throughout the years. However, there is one main issue with Zdarski. He doesn't want to do it. Zdarski's made it very clear he doesn't want to write a mainline Spider-Man book, and the reason for that, well, it's actually kind of our fault. It's videos like this, it's discussions online between people like me and you, it's people online and the debates around the character of Spider-Man. He doesn't feel like he could really handle that sort of debate about his own comic book. And that's fair enough. I mean, all you have to look is to the Tobey Maguire, Tom Holland and Andrew Garfield debate on who's the best live-action Spider-Man. The debates are absolutely fearful, and people do not hold back when debating who is their favourite live-action Spider-Man. And the same thing happens with comic writers as well, and Chip Zdarski doesn't want that, so that's totally understandable. So that's Zdarski off the table. Who else has the capacity to write Spider-Man for the next few years? Well, the two writers that actually spring to mind are Greg Wisman and Jonathan Hickman. Now, both of these guys are currently writing Spider-Man, just on different books, and they're both doing amazingly. However, the one issue is that I highly doubt they are ever willing to leave their current runs to come over to Amazing Spider-Man. Jonathan Hickman especially, since he's also kind of just building the whole Ultimate Universe by himself as well. So not only is he writing Ultimate Spider-Man, he's writing a bunch of other stuff. So I don't think Jonathan Hickman would have even time or thought of mind to come over to ASM. As for Greg Wisman, it's clear that he has that pizzazz to write Spider-Man full-time on ASM, but his Spectacular Spider-Man series is mostly allowing him to have fun with the character, and I don't think he can do that on ASM. With the way that Wisman likes to develop characters with deep underlying progressive stories, I think he wouldn't even like to write for the mainline book. One thing we've got to consider about Greg Wisman is that he's a very astute writer. He's written for many cartoons in the past. He's very big in the cartoon industry as a writer and a producer and even a showrunner. And he's even written Spectacular Spider-Man, proving which direction he'd like to go for the character. And I feel like if Marvel Editorial weren't willing to give him those tools that he'd need to make the character the way that he wanted, he wouldn't want to come aboard. So Greg Wisman is out of the picture as well. Okay, well, who does that leave then? There's actually 3 other writers that I personally consider for the role. First, let's start with my most left field option, and then we'll move on to the one that I think is more likely to happen. Number 1, now don't kill me and put your pitchforks down, Dan Slott. Why not give Dan Slott a second crack of the whip at Spider-Man? A lot of people will remember him for mostly unsuccessful end to his run before Nick Spencer took over. But when you look back, especially just after One More Day, Dan Slott killed it with the Spider-Man books. We also have to remember that he consulted and even helped with the writing on Marvel's Spider-Man on the PS4, and that is largely considered to be one of the best Spider-Man adaptations to ever be made. Spider-Man is the worst he's ever been right now in terms of direction and storytelling, so why not allow a seasoned veteran of the character for a couple of years at least to try and write the book, to try and use that experience that he already has with that character to get him back where he needs to be, before then handing it off to someone else. I don't see this happening in a million years, but I don't think personally it's a bad shout at all. That brings me on to number 2, which of course is J.M. DeMatteis. Once again, another writer who is very experienced with Spider-Man, DeMatteis would thrive in building Peter's character back up in the modern day, and gave us some of the most memorable and brilliant Spider-Man stories, including Kraven's Last Hunt. I would love for DeMatteis to come back full-time to the Spider-Man books, however, I don't think this option is likely, because I just feel like DeMatteis is too good for Marvel editorial to mess with. We have to remember so much of what DeMatteis has wrote in the past has either been retconned or just blatantly changed for no apparent reason by Marvel editorial, so I don't think DeMatteis would bite the bullet again, and I don't think he'd come back as much as I would love him to. And that brings me on to number 1 and my most likely option, and that is Jed MacKay. MacKay is definitely a little bit more of a modern take, but I personally think combining the likelihood with who I'd most want, I think MacKay is probably the most likely one. And I would not be surprised if I was right that if in a couple of months, Jed MacKay was announced to be taking over after ZEB Wells has finally finished. MacKay has written Spider-Man related books before, including Black Cat and Edge of Spider-Geddon. While he isn't the outright writer that I would pick based off quality, I definitely think he could be a good option. His stuff is good from what I've read in the past, and yes, I've definitely read more from other comic book writers, but I don't see why he'd be a bad option. To my knowledge, he's currently on Avengers right now, so there could be a good chance that he could also take on Spider-Man at the same time. Those are my 3 personal picks on who I think will get the role, but obviously there are many more names to consider, like Scott Snyder, for example, Tom Taylor, Robert Kirkman, Nick Spencer, maybe even Brian Michael Bendis, who knows, and many more writers out there who could be given a shout to write 616 Spider-Man and bring ASM back to its glory days. Here you can watch my video reviewing one of ZEB Wells' latest issue and where we're kind of at with the ASM books at this point in time. Thank you very much to the members, you guys are absolutely awesome. Make sure to become a member if you want to support the channel for as little as 99p a month. Thank you guys for watching, make sure to subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care and peace.